I died on a Tuesday. Well, not in the way you see in the movies, with a long tunnel and a choir of angels. For me, it started with the smell of wet asphalt and the lukewarm order of Kung Pao chicken getting cold in my delivery bag. My name is Leo. Back then, I was just another guy on a motorcycle. A red DoorDash bag strapped to my back, trying to beat the LA traffic and make rent. It was the same old hustle, you know? Order after order, rain or shine. My world was small. It was my tiny apartment, my bike, and the glowing screen of my phone telling me where to go next. That night was different, though. A light rain had made the streets slick and shiny like a river of black glass. I was tired. Bone tired. All I wanted was to drop off this last order someplace out in the valley and call it a night. I remember looking at the address on my phone, thinking about the hot shower waiting for me. I had no idea that I wasn't just making the last delivery of the night, I was making the last delivery of the life I used to know. I saw the headlights just a second too late. They came out of a side street, fast and bright, a sudden sun in the darkness. There was no time to think, no time to even curse. Just the high-pitched, terrifying scream of tires fighting for a grip on the wet road. My world didn't fade to black. It exploded. Before that night, before the rain and the screeching tires, my life was a loop. A really boring, exhausting loop. I wasn't living, I was just cycling through the days. My alarm would go off at 11 a.m., I'd grab whatever was in the fridge, usually just a cold slice of pizza, and then I'd get on the bike. For the next 10, sometimes 12 hours, my only boss was the glowing screen of my phone. Ping, go here. Ping, go there. My world had shrunk down to the size of that phone screen. I used to have dreams, you know? Big ones. I came to LA to make music. I had a guitar, a book full of songs, and this fire in my chest. But Allah has a way of pouring water on that kind of fire. Rejection after rejection, and soon enough, rent became more important than a rhyme. The guitar started gathering dust in the corner of my apartment, looking more like a tombstone for a dead dream than an instrument. Nobody knew that. Not my family, not the few friends I had. To them, I was just Leo, the guy who's always working. I remember this one call with my mom, maybe a week before the accident. She was on the other end of the line, her voice warm and worried like always. "Are you happy, honey?" she asked. I was parked on the side of some busy street, the smell of exhaust filling my helmet, another order buzzing on my phone. Looked at my reflection in the dark screen, tired eyes. A stranger. "Yeah, Mom, I'm good." "It's busy," I lied. The lie felt heavy in my mouth, but what was I supposed to say? That I felt like a ghost haunting the streets of a city that had chewed me up and spit me out? The truth is, I was completely, utterly alone, not just physically, but in here, in my soul. It was a kind of emptiness that felt like a constant, low hum in the back of my mind. Some nights, after a long shift, I'd just sit on my bike and watch the city lights blur together. I'd see people in restaurants, laughing, connecting, and I felt like I was on the other side of a thick pane of glass, watching a life I wasn't a part of. I was invisible. A human delivery drone. But the thing nobody knew, the real secret I was carrying, was that I was saving every penny I could. Not for a new guitar or for a better apartment. I was saving up to leave, to disappear. I had this fantasy of just riding my bike east until I hit a town so small it wasn't on a map, and just starting over, becoming someone else. I figured if I couldn't make my dream come true, I could at least outrun the failure. That was the guy who was riding through the rain that night, not a musician, not a dreamer anymore. Just a guy running from his own life, carrying a bag of lukewarm chicken. I thought the worst thing that could happen was getting a bad rating on the app. I had no idea that I was about to be stopped in my tracks, and that the end of the road was actually the beginning of a whole new journey. What do you do when you feel like you're just a ghost in your own life? Have you ever felt that way? If my story resonates with you, subscribe and hit the bell. There's so much more I need to tell you, and I'll be sharing more stories like this one very soon. Looking back, the universe was screaming at me to stop. I just wasn't listening. The whole night felt off, like a song playing in the wrong key. It started with small things. The app kept crashing, sending me on these wild goose chases for orders that didn't exist. I wasted a solid hour and half my phone battery before the first paying delivery even came through. I remember sitting on my bike under a buzzing streetlight, so frustrated I almost just went home. But rent was due. It was always due. Then there was the delivery to that little house in Echo Park. An old woman opened the door, her face a roadmap of wrinkles. She took the bag of tacos from me, but she didn't just say thanks and close the door. She held my gaze for a second too long, her eyes filled with this strange, deep sadness. "You be careful out there tonight, son," she said, and her voice was so heavy it felt less like a friendly tip and more like a prophecy. It was weird. It stuck with me, clinging to my thoughts like the damp air. I tried to shake it off. I got back on my bike, telling myself she was just a nice old lady. But a real shiver went down my spine, and it had nothing to do with the cold rain that was starting to fall. It was that feeling you get when you're walking alone in the dark and you just know you're being watched. I kept checking my mirrors, but there was no one there. Just the endless river of red and white lights flowing down the 101. The city, my city, suddenly felt alien, hostile. But what happened next was even worse. I was heading to pick up the Kung Pao chicken when a blue sedan blew through a red light. It happened so fast. 1 second I was cruising, the next this wall of metal was rushing toward my left side. I yanked the handlebars hard, my back tire skidding on the wet asphalt with a sickening hiss. The car missed me by inches. I could feel the wind from it whip past my face. My heart felt like it was trying to punch its way out of my chest. The driver never even slowed down. I should have stopped then. I know that now. Any sane person would have taken that as a sign, called it a night, and gone home to safety. I just sat there in the middle of the intersection for a full minute, my whole body trembling, the rain dripping from the end of my nose. But then my phone pinged. It was the last order, the one that would take me out to the valley. The payout was good, too good to ignore. I looked at the dollar amount on the screen, thinking of my escape fund. That little pile of cash was my only hope, the one thing that kept me going. I told myself the app glitches, the old woman, the near miss, it was all just a string of bad luck. A tough night. I convinced myself that if I could just push through this one last delivery, everything would be okay. I had no idea that by hitting accept, I was agreeing to much more than a delivery. I was agreeing to the end of my life as I knew it. Have you ever ignored your gut feeling and lived to regret it? If this story is speaking to you, subscribe and turn on notifications. The most unbelievable part is what came next, and you won't want to miss it. I'll be sharing more stories that show how life can change in an instant. The rain was coming down harder now, not a drizzle anymore, but a steady, determined drumming against my helmet. The road into the valley was a dark, winding ribbon, and the streetlights were few and far between. I was pushing it, I know, leaning into the turns a little too hard, trying to shave a few minutes off the trip. The thought of that escape fund was like a little engine inside my chest, pushing me forward. Just this one last delivery. Then I could go home. Then I could be one step closer to disappearing. I saw the headlights as I came around a blind curve. They weren't in their lane. They were a pair of bright, angry eyes, right in the middle of the road, coming straight for me. There was no time. Not for the brakes, not for a prayer, not even for a final panicked breath. It was just this sudden, blinding white light that swallowed everything. My last thought wasn't about my mom or my dad or the music I never made. It was just the chicken. I remember thinking clear as day the Kung Pao was going to be everywhere. It was such a stupid, pointless thought. But that's what was in my head when the world shattered into a million pieces. There was an explosion of sound, the horrifying crunch of metal and plastic, the shriek of my bike being torn apart. I felt a violent, impossible jolt, and then I was flying. For a split second, I was weightless, tumbling through the cold, wet air. I saw the dark asphalt spinning below me, getting closer and closer, and then nothing. But it wasn't the nothingness of a dark room. It was a different kind of nothing. The pain was gone. The cold was gone. The terrifying sound of the crash just evaporated. It was replaced by a silence so deep and so complete it felt like it had a weight to it. I wasn't scared, I felt calm. A kind of peace I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. I felt like I was floating in a warm, quiet ocean. Slowly a light began to grow in the darkness. Not the harsh headlights of the car, but a soft, golden light that felt like an embrace. It wasn't just something I saw, it was something I felt. It wrapped around me, held me, and for the first time since I was a little kid, I knew without a doubt that I was safe. And then I heard the voice. It wasn't a sound that came through my ears. It was a voice that bloomed inside my soul, a sound that was as powerful as thunder and as gentle as a whisper. It was a voice made of pure love, a love so immense it made every other feeling in my life seem small and faded. It spoke my name. Leo, it said, and the word filled every part of me. Your road has come to an end, but your true mission is just beginning. Go back. You will be a testament to my love. Your voice will deliver hope to those who are lost. What would you do if you were given a message like that, in a moment between life and death? If this story is reaching you, please subscribe and hit the bell. The miracle that happened next changed not just my life, but the lives of thousands. I'll be sharing more stories that prove we're never truly alone. That command, go back, wasn't a suggestion. It was a force. The beautiful, warm peace began to recede, pulled away from me like a tide going out, leaving me cold and exposed. The golden light dissolved, and the deep, profound silence was shattered. Not by a loud noise, but by 1,000 tiny ones, all rushing in at once. The hiss of the rain on the pavement, the distant wail of a siren getting closer, a man's voice shouting something I couldn't understand. I was no longer floating in that warm ocean. I was somewhere else. For a second, I was completely lost. It felt like waking up in a room you've never seen before. your mind scrambling to figure out where you are. I was hovering maybe 10 feet off the ground, right in the middle of the road. The rain was passing right through me. I could see the individual drops falling, but I couldn't feel them. They weren't wet. They weren't cold. They were just there, and then I looked down. That's when I saw it. The scene was laid out below me like a horrible diorama. My motorcycle was a mangled mess of red and black metal, twisted into a shape it was never meant to be. The Kung Pao chicken was everywhere, just like I thought it would be, scattered across the asphalt. And next to the bike was a body. A young guy in a drenched DoorDash jacket, lying impossibly still. His helmet was cracked and one of his legs was bent at an angle that made my stomach turn, even though I didn't really have a stomach anymore. It took my brain a full 10 seconds to process what I was seeing. That was me. That broken thing on the ground was my body. I was watching my own life bleed out on a dark, wet road in the valley. It was the most surreal, terrifying moment of my life. I felt a desperate urge to scream, to shout, "Hey, I'm up here. I'm okay." But I had no voice. I was a ghost at my own accident scene. The other car, the one with the bright headlights, was crumpled against a telephone pole. A guy stumbled out, holding his head, looking dazed. He stared at my body, his face pale with horror under the flashing lights of the approaching ambulance. He didn't see me, of course. No one did. I was completely invisible, a silent witness to my own tragedy. But the thing that really shook me, the secret that nobody else could ever know, was what I saw right then. As the paramedics rushed to my body, I saw a faint, shimmering light around them. Not the golden light I had just left, but a soft, silvery one. And I saw another one around the driver of the car. I could see their fear, their panic, but I could also see this light, this energy. It was like I could suddenly see people's souls. And when I looked back at my own body on the ground, I saw that my light was almost gone. It was just a flicker, a tiny, fading ember about to be snuffed out. What do you think you would see if you could look at the world this way, even just for a moment? If this story is making you think, subscribe and hit the bell. Because what I saw next, as that light was about to go out for good, is the reason I'm able to tell you this story today. I'll be sharing more moments that changed my life forever. As I watched that last flicker of my own life about to go out, the whole scene below me, the rain, the flashing lights, my broken body, it all just dissolved. It didn't fade to black. It was more like a watercolor painting left out in a storm. The colors bleeding into each other until there was nothing left but a blank white canvas. The sirens, the shouting, the hiss of the rain, it all melted away into a silence that was more than just a lack of sound. It was a presence, a deep humming peace that vibrated in the very core of what I now was. Then the light returned. Not the white canvas from before, but the golden living light I had felt for just a moment. This time it wasn't just around me. It was me, and I was it. I was floating in an endless ocean of warmth and color. There were colors here that have no names on earth, hues that felt like joy and shades that felt like peace. The air, if you could call it that, hummed with a gentle energy like a million soft voices all singing a single perfect note. There was no fear, there was no pain, there was only love. A love so total and unconditional it made every other emotion I'd ever felt seem like a pale imitation. And then I wasn't alone. I didn't see a figure or a face. There was no old man on a throne, but I felt a presence. It was everywhere at once. It was the light, the color, the sound, and it was inside me. It knew me. It knew every stupid mistake I'd ever made, every lie I'd ever told, every dark thought I'd ever had, and it loved me anyway. It loved me with a power that was both overwhelming and incredibly gentle. Without a single word being spoken, my life was laid out before me. It wasn't like watching a movie. I was in it. I felt everything, not just from my own point of view, but from everyone else's. I felt my mom's worry every time I lied and said I was fine. I felt the brief annoyance of a customer when I was late. I felt the loneliness of the old woman in Echo Park, but there was no judgment, no shame. It was just understanding. I saw my whole life not as a series of failures, but as a path. Every wrong turn, every dead end had been leading me to this exact moment. I saw my dream of being a musician. I saw the dusty guitar in the corner, but here in this place it didn't look like a tombstone for a dead dream. I understood that the music wasn't in the guitar, it was in me. The desire to connect, to make people feel something, that was the real song. My delivery job wasn't a punishment, it was my training. It had sent me into the lonely corners of the city, into the homes of strangers, to show me just how much people needed a little bit of light. That's when the voice bloomed inside my soul again, clear as day. Leo, your road has come to an end, but your true mission is just beginning. Go back. You will be a testament to my love. Your voice will deliver hope to those who are lost. I understood then. My job wasn't over. The delivery was just changing. Instead of food in a red bag, I was meant to deliver this feeling, this peace, this unconditional love. I felt a choice being offered. In front of me, the light grew even brighter, more beautiful, pulling me in. I knew, with a certainty that went beyond thought, that if I went into that brighter light, I would stay here forever in this perfect peace. But behind me, I could feel the world. I could feel all the pain and the loneliness, all the people like me, riding through their own dark, rainy nights, thinking they were invisible. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to run from it. I wanted to run to it. If you were given that choice between perfect peace and a painful purpose, which one would you choose? If this story is moving you, please subscribe and hit the bell. What happened when I made my choice and how I woke up is the most incredible part of all. I'll be sharing more stories that prove our purpose is often found where we least expect it. I made my choice. Standing there, bathed in that perfect golden peace, I chose the pain. I chose the rain and the cold and the loneliness of the world because for the first time I didn't see it as a curse. I saw it as a calling. I saw all the other Leos out there lost in their own storms, and I knew I couldn't leave them. I couldn't just float away into bliss knowing they were still down there, feeling invisible. I turned my back on that perfect light, and I chose them. I chose you. The moment I made the decision, everything changed. The warm, loving presence didn't get angry. It didn't feel like a rejection. Instead, it surged through me one last time, a final, powerful wave of pure love and energy. It was like a final instruction, a blessing for the journey ahead, burned directly into my soul. The message was the same, but now it felt different. It wasn't just a command. It was my mission, my purpose, to deliver hope to those who were lost. Then it felt like the universe had me in a slingshot and just let go. I was ripped backwards, pulled away from the light with a violence that was the complete opposite of the gentle peace I had known. The colors dissolved. The beautiful hum shattered into a million screaming pieces. It was like being thrown into a freezing, raging river. All the sensations of the world came rushing back at me at once, but 100 times more intense. The cold wasn't just chilly, it was a bone-deep agony. The sound of the sirens wasn't distant anymore. It was a physical blow against my ears. I was falling, tumbling back through the darkness, and I could feel the weight of my body again. The heaviness of my limbs, the fire in my shattered leg, the crushing pressure in my chest. I felt a tremendous, gut-wrenching jolt, like I'd been dropped from a 10-story building and landed right back inside my own skin. A single, ragged gasp of air filled my lungs. It felt like breathing fire and glass. My eyes snapped open. The world was a blur of flashing red and blue lights, distorted by the rain on what I realized was a paramedic's clear face shield. He was leaning over me, his face a mask of complete and utter shock. I could hear his voice, muffled and distant, as if coming from underwater. He's breathing. I've got a pulse. He's back. I don't believe it. He's back. I tried to speak, to tell him where I'd been, but all that came out was a weak, broken sound. I was back on the cold, wet asphalt. I was back in the pain. But this time I wasn't alone. Have you ever had to choose the harder path because you knew deep down it was the right one? If my story is helping you find your own path, subscribe and hit the bell. Waking up in that hospital room was just the beginning of the real miracle, and I'll be sharing more of my journey with you. Waking up in the hospital was like being born all over again, but without the innocence. It was just cold, bright, and loud. The first thing I remember is the smell, that sharp, sterile scent of antiseptic that gets in the back of your throat. The steady, rhythmic beep of a heart monitor was the new soundtrack to my life. I tried to move, but a searing pain shot through my entire left side, pinning me to the rough, starchy sheets. It was real. The pain was horribly, undeniably real. A doctor came in, a kind-faced man with tired eyes. He looked at my chart, then at me, and just shook his head slowly. "Leo," he said, his voice soft, "you're a medical anomaly. Broken femur, 3 fractured ribs, severe concussion. Based on the accident report, you shouldn't be here. Not like this." He called it a second chance. A miracle. He had no idea what a miracle really was. He saw a body that was healing against the odds. I knew I was a soul that had been sent back on a mission. My mom was the first person I saw after the doctor left. She just stood in the doorway for a second, her hand covering her mouth, her face a mess of relief and terror. Then she rushed to my bedside and grabbed my hand. Her touch was the first thing that felt truly real. She was crying, these silent, body-shaking sobs, and I could feel all her fear, all her love, pouring into me. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to tell her about the golden light, about the voice, about the peace. But how could I? The words felt too big, too sacred for that sterile white room. So I just squeezed her hand back and whispered, "I'm okay, Mom." It was the first time in years that I wasn't lying. But what happened next was the first sign that I hadn't come back alone. A young nurse came in to check my vitals. She had a bright professional smile plastered on her face, but I saw something else. Around her, just like I'd seen at the crash site, was that faint silvery light, and hers was flickering. It was dim and unsteady, especially around her heart. I didn't just see it, I felt it. I felt a deep, crushing sadness coming from her, a loneliness that mirrored my own from before. She was hurting badly and hiding it from the world. Nobody else could see it, only me. The weeks that followed were brutal. Learning to walk again felt like climbing a mountain made of broken glass. Every step was a battle. The old Leo would have given up. He would have drowned in the pain and the frustration. But something inside me had been fundamentally rewired. I felt the pain, yes, but it didn't own me. It was just a sensation. A reminder of the choice I made. My old life, the one with the dusty guitar and the escape fund, felt like a story I'd read about someone else. That guy was gone. He died on that wet road. The person in this hospital bed, the one fighting to stand on his own 2 feet again, was here for one reason, to deliver a message. And I was just starting to understand that my delivery route was going to be much bigger than the streets of LA. What would you do if you could suddenly see the hidden pain in everyone around you? If this story is making you see things differently, subscribe and hit the bell. Because leaving that hospital was the beginning of my true mission, and you'll want to see what happened when I made my first real delivery. Leaving the hospital was like stepping onto a different planet that just happened to look like La. The sunlight felt warmer, the smog-filled air didn't feel as heavy, but the biggest change was the people. As I limped out of those automatic glass doors, the street was suddenly a river of light. I saw it around everyone, a soft, shimmering energy. A businessman rushing past had a tight, anxious buzz of yellow around his head. A young woman waiting for the bus was surrounded by a soft, melancholy blue. It was everywhere, my secret sight. I went back to my old apartment, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a museum exhibit of a life that was no longer mine. The first thing I saw was the guitar, still in the corner, covered in a thin layer of dust. Before, looking at it felt like a punch to the gut, a reminder of my failure. But now I felt nothing but a quiet sense of peace. I picked it up, my fingers finding the old, familiar frets. The dream of being a rock star was dead. I knew that. But the music wasn't. I started to play, and for the first time, a song came out that wasn't about me. It was about a warm, golden light. My relationships changed overnight. My mom would call, her voice still laced with that familiar worry. But I didn't have to lie anymore. "How are you, honey?" "Really?" she'd ask. And I could tell her the truth. "I'm good, Mom. I've never been better." I couldn't tell her why, not really. But she could hear it in my voice. The desperation was gone. The exhaustion was gone. I was finally present. It was like I'd spent my whole life speaking to my family from behind a thick wall of glass, and the crash had finally shattered it. But the real mission, my new purpose, didn't become clear until about a week later. I was sitting in a cheap diner just watching people when I saw my waitress. She couldn't have been older than 20. She had a bright, forced smile, but her light was so dim it was almost gone, flickering like a dying candle in a storm. I could feel her despair. It was a cold, empty feeling I knew all too well. When she brought my check, my heart was pounding. The voice echoed in my soul, "Deliver hope." I looked up at her, right into her tired eyes. "Hey," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what you're going through, but you're not alone in it, I promise." That was the first real revelation. Her professional smile faltered. Her eyes filled with tears, and for just a second, I saw her light flare, a bright, beautiful silver. She just nodded, unable to speak, and walked away. I had done it. I had made a delivery. I didn't need a motorcycle or a red bag. All I needed was my voice. I sat there staring at my reflection in the diner window, and I finally saw the truth. My old life wasn't a waste. All those lonely nights on the bike, all those brief anonymous encounters at 1,000 different doors, it was all training. God had been teaching me how to find the people who were lost in the dark. I went home, my mind racing. How could I reach more people? I couldn't just walk around the city talking to strangers in diners. Then my eyes landed on my phone sitting on the counter. The very thing that used to be my boss, my leash, the glowing screen that dictated my every move. It was my old delivery tool, and I realized it could be my new one too. I picked it up, my hands trembling slightly, and opened the camera. I turned it around to face me. For years, all I wanted was to be invisible, to disappear. But now, I knew I had to be seen. I had to speak up. I took a deep breath, looked straight into that tiny lens, and I prepared to make the most important delivery of my life. Have you ever realized that your greatest pain was actually preparing you for your true purpose? If this story is giving you hope, subscribe and hit the bell. Because what happened after I pressed that record button started a chain reaction I never could have imagined, and I'll be sharing that with you very soon. I pressed record. There was no script, no fancy lighting. It was just me in my tiny apartment with the dusty guitar in the corner watching me like an old friend. I looked into that small, dark lens, and for the first time I wasn't afraid of being seen. I just started talking. I told them everything: the rain, the loneliness, the screech of the tires, and the beautiful, impossible peace of that golden light. I told them the message that was burned into my soul: deliver hope. I finished, my hand trembling as I hit upload, and then I just let it go, sending my story out into the world like a message in a bottle. I thought maybe a few friends would see it. I had no idea what was about to happen. My phone, the very same one that used to chain me to my bike, began to light up with a different kind of notification. Not delivery pings, but messages. Hundreds, then thousands. People from cities I'd never heard of, from countries I'd never see, all saying the same thing in 100 different ways. Me too. I feel invisible too. My story wasn't just my story anymore, it had become theirs. My one voice was becoming a chorus. That's when I truly understood. The crash wasn't a punishment. It was a redirection. My life wasn't a failure. It was a training ground. Every lonely night, every wrong turn, every door I ever knocked on was preparing me for this. It was teaching me how to find the people who felt lost in the dark, because I had been one of them. I used to think my purpose was to deliver food in a red bag. But my real delivery, our real delivery, is to carry a little bit of that golden light to each other. It's to look someone in the eye and let them know they are not alone. My life was turned upside down so I could stand here today and tell you this: you are not invisible. Your life right now, with all its struggles and its quiet moments, is not a mistake. It is a sacred journey, and you have a purpose that is so much greater than just making it to the end of the day. So I have to ask you, what if you stopped waiting for a sign and realized that your own life is the message you were meant to deliver? If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and hit the bell. I have so much more to share about this journey, and I'll be telling more stories that prove we all have a purpose waiting to be discovered.